So we ended the last video showing multiple ways to reference a type from another package. Let's work on using import statements in your class in this video. So to use a class in your code which resides in another package, even a parent package, you must use one of the mechanisms I described in the last video, a fully qualified class name, which can get tedious, or one flavor of an import statement. So for the following exercises in this video, I'm going to make IntelliJ less intelligent. Now IntelliJ and most IDEs will handle most of the work of maintaining the correct import statements required by your code, and it will actually remove unused or redundant statements. But we want to do the opposite. We want to go back to make it less intelligent, so you're seeing the manual commands and the manual imports, and this can be very useful in the exam where you won't have the advantage of using an IDE. So to do that, we're going to go up to File, into Settings. Then I'm going to come down to Editor, and I come down to General. I'm going to select Auto Import. Now by default, or if not by default, how you'd normally configure IntelliJ or other IDEs, you'd add unambiguous imports on the fly and optimize imports on the fly. In other words, you'd hand over responsibility for importing to the IDE. But we want to specifically turn that off. So if you're using IntelliJ, do what I'm doing there, or do the equivalent in whichever IDE you're using. Alright, next we need to create a new class. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to create it at the source level. So right-clicking on the source folder, and we're just going to call this one test fqcn. So no package name, in other words. I'm going to paste in some code. Now this code should compile. We run it. No real surprises. Pretty basic. Now in Java, you don't actually have to qualify any class in the java.lang package or use the java.lang import statement. So you can see we're using java.lang.string at the moment. So let's actually change the code now, removing the fully qualified class name for string, but also adding a couple of lines of code to use our vine vegetable class. Okay, so there's the code. We'll run that now. So you can see the string class on line 10 isn't using a fully qualified class name, but other classes such as our vine vegetable class, because it's in another package, has to be qualified or imported. In this case, we're using a fully qualified class name for vine vegetable. Right, so let's see a variation of it using an import statement. We're going to create another class now. Right-click source folder, new Java class. We'll call this one test import. Paste in the code. Right, so you see from this code, we're not importing java.lang.string, and that's because it's implied. We are importing garden.vegetable.vinevegetable, as you can see, and as a result of the import on line 7, we can use a simple name for vine vegetable to make the code a little less verbose. If we run this, we get the appropriate output and everything works fine. Now alternatively, you can just use a type import on demand declaration for our import statement. So I can change vine vegetable to star, like so, and that's now a type import on demand because I'm using the star there. Noting that IntelliJ is giving us a hint there to go back to use a single class import, but we're ignoring its advice at the moment. Running that code, and that still works. So when would you use one or the other? For the most part, you'll always use a single type import declaration, and your IDE will be set to automatically include the import statement. However, it's important to know that the single type import declaration, firstly, takes precedence on the import on demand declaration, and secondly, will prevent you from creating a class of the same name in your source file. So let's look at both of these. To do that, we need to create a new source file. To our package again, I'm going to right-click the source folder, new Java class, nursery.vegetable.vinevegetable, and obviously by specifying the package, we've now got a package nursery.vegetable and a class vine vegetable in that package. We'll paste some code in there to replace what we've just created for our vine vegetable in our nursery.vegetable package. Now we're going to go back to our test import. And what I'm going to do is come down here, below the import, and type import nursery.vegetable.star, semicolon, to finish the line. And you can see down here now, if I hover over it, I'll just move this up so you can see it. Reference to vine vegetable is ambiguous. Both garden.vegetable.vinevegetable and nursery.vegetable.vinevegetable match. So basically the problem here is we've now got ambiguous references. We can get around that. We're coming back up to our import statements. Note also that before I say that, unused import statement, the IDE is telling us that this is not being used at the moment. But we can get around it, as I said, by changing that from a star to our vine vegetable. And suddenly the code works again. If we run this to confirm, we can see the output, I'm a nursery vine vegetable. So that's telling us that the more specific import was the import that was used if both imports are selected. And obviously IntelliJ is helpfully showing us that one of the imports is not being used by colouring it out in grey or removing the colour to grey. And just to confirm this, we can go back to changing this again. Dot vine vegetable, specify that both of them, we've already got a definition there, that's an error. But if we change this one to a star, run the code, we've now got the output for the vine vegetable class in the garden.vegetable package. So if you need to use both classes in the same source file, you can use a fully qualified class name for one instance. So at the moment we're using garden.vegetable.vinevegetable. Below that, I could paste in some code using a fully qualified class name there for vine vegetable from the nursery.vegetable package. Right click that, and we now get the output from both. Right, the other thing I want to show you now is what happens if we try and create a class in the same file of the same name. So we come down, you need to put it either before or after the test import class. I'm going to put it after. Class. Notice we've got an error there. Vine vegetable is already defined in this compilation unit. Basically IntelliJ is identifying this as a compiler error. Because of the single type import statement, we cannot now create a local class called vine vegetable. What we can do though is go back up to our imports, change both to import on demand declarations. No errors. If we run this now, the output we get is I'm a local vine vegetable, which is coming from our local class, and I'm a nursery vine vegetable, which is coming from our fully qualified class name reference to vine vegetable from nursery.vegetable package. Right, and just before finishing this video, I want to point out, if we go back up to the import section, if we do an import along the lines of import garden.star, well, that won't pull in the classes in the nested packages, but only the classes defined at this package level. So in other words, you wouldn't be importing garden.vegetable.vinevegetable with that statement. So keep that in mind as well. All right, so I'll just remove that. Right, so I'll end the video here. In the next one, I want to go over and start talking about the next two types of import statements that we originally discussed in the previous video slides, namely the single static import declaration and static import on demand declarations. See you in the next video.